This year, an AI rock band got 1 million streams on Spotify, and an AI singer got number 3 on the hot gospel charts. We'll get to the irony of a disembodied digital entity worshiping God another time. Anyway, back on topic. Now we even have a country, quote, star getting number 1 on a Billboard chart. Is metal next? Is it possible for an AI metal band to get mass appeal? We'll theorize about that on episode 245 of Heavy Metal Philosophy. Plus, I'll tell the story of how an AI fraudster scammed the company I work for, and I'm giving you my final argument on the ethics of AI. Welcome, metalheads. I'm the host of Heavy Metal Philosophy and writer for Metal Digest, Jon Barbas. Make sure you stick around to the end of the episode for the final argument. But before we get started, let's first address all my biases. Now, longtime subscribers already know how my views on AI have evolved or devolved over the past year, but there's a lot of new subscribers since then, and I should probably be upfront with my proclivities. I always think it's important to be honest about our biases before opining publicly. I believe I started out with an open mind towards AI when it first hit the national consciousness. You might recall one of the first episodes I did on AI art, I resisted some of the knee-jerk responses to AI art. And I think that my reflexive defense of the technology came from another bias I have. When I was a kid, I promised myself that I would never become that old man that hates everything new. So I was open to the argument that generative AI was just the next new tech like Photoshop and Pro Tools before it. So I gave ChatGPT a spin to see what all the fuss was about. But I didn't ask it about quantum physics or ancient philosophy. I asked it about something I'm an expert on. I asked it about metal. I asked it to provide me with a summary of Metallica's career. And what it gave me was a mostly accurate summary. That is, except for all the quotes it attributed to James Hetfield that were completely made up. People call this, quote, hallucinating. I call it lying. Turns out that large language models, their prime directive isn't accuracy, it's constructing believable sentences. So that was my first red flag. But even with this, I wasn't willing to completely throw it out yet. I mean, this is a new technology. It's only going to get better from here, right? I didn't get radicalized until I saw the arguments of pro-AI people. No, it wasn't the anti-AI people that convinced me, even though they have good points about art theft and environmental harm and slop and reducing human capabilities. It was actually the, quote, benefits that the pro-AI people were espousing that convinced me. The things they say are incredibly off-putting. Like this brilliant piece of work. Quote, artists spent decades telling people anyone can draw if they practice. But the moment AI makes art accessible to everyone, suddenly art requires soul and suffering. The mask slipped. You never cared about democratizing art. You just wanted to be special. End quote. Now I've already addressed the argument that AI, quote, democratizes art on this podcast before. I've already talked about all the free software that's available and the fact that there's now boxes that fit in the palm of my hand that can emulate every guitar amp ever made for less than $200. Affiliate link in the description below on YouTube. But this gem comes at it from a whole other angle than cost. How on earth is an artist saying to somebody, all you got to do is practice, not democratizing art? They're literally saying all you got to do is practice and you are an artist. You want to talk about the mask slipping. Democratizing art was never about cost. It was about willingness to practice. But you know what? I'm done arguing with people about whether AI art is valid, whether or not it's theft, or whether if it's even good. I don't think I'm going to be able to convince these people. They've already made up their mind. And when I read statements like this, it's pretty clear that they started from their conclusion and then made up their arguments afterwards. I only have one point, one final argument about generative AI that I will ever bother with again. And I'll get to that point soon, that final argument. But first, I need to answer another question that I set up in the intro. Is metal next? Will a metal AI band ever gain mass appeal? Well, as per my usual, the answer is, it depends. Not to pull a Jordan Peterson here, but it depends on what do you mean by metal? No, I don't think that black and death metal fans will ever accept an AI metal band, even if it's got sick riffs. But what about metalcore, especially on the more pop-oriented end? What about butt rock? Yeah, I can totally see it. You know the guy. You're at the coffee machine at the office and he walks up to you as some coworker you haven't met yet, and he says, "I heard you like metal." Yeah, I'm into the heavy stuff too, you know. Disturbed, Papa Roach. Yeah, I don't think that guy's going to have discerning taste. And that's not to throw shade at Papa Roach, maybe the other, but not Papa Roach. It's just, you know, the more popular the music, the less discernment it's going to require. And I know that I'm not doing a very good job of explaining how I'm not throwing shade when I say something like that, but honestly, writing a big hit is one of the hardest things to do in music. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. And that's my opinion on if AI metal can ever chart. Yes, pop metal can chart, but I don't think extreme metalheads will ever go for it. Now, I do have one other thing I promised in the intro that I gotta deliver. The company I work for in the daytime got completely scammed by an AI fraudster. Let's see if I can tell this story concisely. This year, my company landed a contract with a big company to manufacture robots for them. And one of those deliverables was detailed work instructions. And while I don't work for the department that manufactures the robots, I do technical writing. So that department asked if I could help out, and I agreed. After a few months, I delivered the document. The department was happy. The customer was happy. And they put in another contract for a lot more robots. A lot more, which meant that a lot more documentation is required. And again, I don't work for that department. I got a lot of other duties. So the company brought in some contractors and consultants to begin the rapid ramp up in scale. And one of those contractors talked the company into hiring him full time to manage the increase in scale and all of the deliverables, which included technical writing. Now here I should mention they asked me how long it took for me to write that document. I said 200 hours. My document was 65 pages. I spent 80 hours on the floor with the guys on the shop floor building the robot so that I could learn how it was done and take pictures of the process. And then I spent another 120 hours writing it. So after that, the new guy took over the project and I went back to my normal duties. And a few weeks after being hired full time, this guy walks up to my boss with the new manual that he wrote and made a big show of flipping the pages in his face and said, "This is 300 pages and it only took me a week." That's a pretty audacious thing to do to an upper manager on your second week on the job. Anyway, a few weeks later, that guy was fired because it turns out he didn't write 300 pages in a week. He uploaded my 65-page document to ChatGPT and prompted it to expand it in more detail, which is not only dishonest, but it also uploaded confidential and proprietary information to OpenAI's servers. So after that, they did a background check on him. Yeah, it turns out everything he told the company was a complete lie. He didn't work where he said he worked before. He didn't go to college where he said he went. And the name he was working on wasn't even his real name. So knowing all that, I'm pretty skeptical that he was also a Navy SEAL that spoke 11 languages. I just don't believe him anymore. I don't want to know what the company paid this consulting firm, nor do I want to know what the final salary was that they agreed upon with Jussie Smollett Madoff. But I'm not surprised that this whole thing turned out to be a scam, because that's what AI is. It's a scam. Let me explain. Remember at the beginning of the episode when I talked about the country, quote, artist charting #1 on Billboard? Yeah, that's a scam too.
Okay, some of you might be wondering, how is this possibly the #1 song on the country charts? Well, the only chart it's #1 on is the digital sales chart, which means how many downloads did it sell? Now, you may be saying, well, who buys downloads? Exactly. So that is from the Apple Store for the most part, the iTunes Store. You can buy it for 99 cents, as you can see here. But let me go to the Billboard chart where it's #1, where they're referencing. There's a little article. It says, Walk My Walk, the act earned its first leader on the Billboard list as Walk My Walk struts to #1 on the country digital song sales chart, 3,000 sold. So it cost $3,000 to get the #1 spot. It's Breaking Rust's second song to reach the ranking. 1 week after Livin' on Borrowed Time, it's #5. Also, one of multiple artificial intelligence assisted compositions experiencing chart success. So this digital chart is not the same as the #1 country chart. The actual country charts that you may be thinking of that have artists like Morgan Wallen at the top would either be the country streaming songs chart on Billboard, which has I Got Better, Morgan Wallen, What I Want, Morgan Wallen, Tate McRae, and I'm the Problem, Morgan Wallen. Or you also have the Billboard Hot Country Songs, which has Morgan Wallen, I Got Better, What I Want, I'm the Problem. Those same 3 songs ordered slightly different. Those are the charts that you may be thinking of as the real charts, okay? So it's kind of a fake out and just a way to grab the story that this is the #1 song. This is a song that costs $3,000 for someone to put up to make #1, so you could get a lot of free advertising like I'm giving it right now on my video. Don't believe the hype. This is exactly what these AI prompters want you to do. They want you to write about it. They want you to talk about it like I'm doing right now and helping it out, just so you can get these headlines written and then it will move up the charts even more. I mean, it's ridiculous. It has 2.28 million monthly listeners.
So it turns out any one of us could spend a few $1,000s buying MP3s, and one of us would have a #1 charting song on Billboard. It's a scam inside of a scam meant to perpetuate itself. But I promised you one other thing that I got to deliver. My final argument about generative AI. Notice I keep calling it generative AI. That's important because it's only generative AI I'm against. I'm not against all AI. There are labs out there using AI to fold proteins to try and cure diseases. Solving humanity's big problems is what technology is for. But for what purpose do we solve all of humanity's problems if we also simultaneously remove humanity? All right, I guess I lied. I do have more than one final point. I had to get that dig in, but my actual final point involves the data centers that are required to run this stuff. AI isn't magic. It requires massive buildings full of servers. And some of these hyperscale data centers use up enough electricity to power millions of homes.
In order to change a human being into this.
Now let me ask you, what do you think is going to happen to all of our power bills if a few million homes suddenly plugged into the power grid at once? Okay, so what benefit is humanity getting out of all these data centers? Is it curing diseases? Or is it making fake news memes and giving tech bros the instant gratification of the simulated experience of being an artist? All right, that was a little snarky. What about the economic benefit? Well, right now, every AI company is losing money hand over fist. OpenAI is spending way more money than they're taking in ChatGPT subscriptions. The only company making a profit is NVIDIA. And even that I find highly suspicious. Because at the time of this recording, NVIDIA is reportedly worth $4.62 trillion with a T. Do you believe that? Do you believe that one company is worth more than all the pharmaceutical companies combined? Sure seems like a scam to me, but don't take my word for it. Google it for yourself how NVIDIA and OpenAI are passing money back and forth. I mean, I guess technically sending the same money back and forth between two companies is commerce. So again, I ask, what is the benefit for all of us? AI is currently 40% of our economy, and it doesn't make any profit. That certainly seems to my layman brain like a bubble. And what happens when this bubble bursts bigger than the 90s .com bubble? Will the next Great Depression be worth all the memes and bad songs? We have a coming crash with a simultaneous rise in cost of living. What do we get for this trade-off? We get nothing. But there are a small handful of people making a lot of money right now. At the time of this recording, Peter Thiel just sold all of his NVIDIA stock. 500,000 shares of stock that he just dumped. There's a few people that are running away with the bag before the bubble bursts. So at this point, I don't care to argue with people on Twitter about AI art anymore. I don't care about, quote, democratizing art. I don't care about ableism. I don't care about efficiency. I don't care about competing with AI art. Can my children afford to live here after I'm gone?